You ever stop and think about how a single musical idea can travel through time, how it can evolve and transform in ways that its creators could never, ever have imagined? Well, it's a story about people, about places, and about pure, unfiltered invention. We are going to follow one specific sound, this kind of keening, voice like wail born in the American South, on an absolutely incredible journey. It starts in the Mississippi Delta, and it ends up in a university lab in Australia, of all places, where it gets completely reinvented. All right, so our story kicks off with a sound on the move. In the early 20th century, something called the Great Migration didn't just change America's cities, it completely changed the way America sounded. You got to imagine facing really harsh conditions in the rural South. Hundreds of thousands of African Americans looked north to cities like Chicago. To them, it was like a promised land of opportunity. And when they made that journey, they didn't just pack their bags, they brought their music with them. And just look at these numbers to get a sense of the scale. And this is just the first wave. This wasn't a trickle, it was a flood of people, of culture, and of sound, all pouring into the city, mostly from Mississippi, riding that Illinois Central Railroad straight north. And that hope, that excitement, you can literally hear it in the music they were making. Bluesmen like Jimmy Rogers sang about Chicago like it was this legendary, almost mythical place. And that optimism, it fueled the journey and set the stage for a total musical revolution. So you take this rural, acoustic music and you drop it into a loud, bustling, industrial city. What happens? Well, it's got to evolve or die, right? It had to get louder. It had to go electric. Yeah, that quiet front porch music from the Delta, it got plugged in and cranked way, way up, just so it could be heard in the crowded, noisy clubs on Chicago's south and west sides. And pioneers like Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, both of whom came up from Mississippi, they became the architects of this new electric sound, landing deals with legendary labels like Chess Records. And look, this new genre didn't just pop up overnight. It grew right along with the city. From those first arrivals during World War I all the way to the booming recording industry of the 50s, Chicago blues became a real institution. Eventually, it even got its own world-famous festival. Okay, but inside all that electric noise, there was this one specific technique, this one little ingredient they brought with them from the Delta that gave the music its soul. And this sound, this is the thread that's going to connect our entire story. Now, to really get this, we need to talk about something called continuous pitch. Think about a regular guitar. You've got those metal bars on the neck, the frets, right? You press a string, you get a C. You press another spot, you get a D. It's all separate steps. But the slide, oh, the slide changes the entire game. See, by putting that little piece of metal or glass on the strings, the player is suddenly free from those frets. They can just glide seamlessly between the notes. It creates this fluid, variable pitch that sounds remarkably like the human voice, crying, or wailing, or singing. And that right there, that was the sound that defined so much of the blues. It's the sound of pure emotion made audible, a direct line from the player's soul straight to the listener's ear, all thanks to that simple little sliding motion. So for a long, long time, that's where the story was. The slide was the soul of the guitar. But then, halfway across the planet, an inventor started asking a really wild question. I mean, really, think about it for a second. A piano is the absolute definition of a rigid instrument. You press a key, a hammer hits a string, you get one specific fixed note. Period. How on earth could you possibly make that sound slide? Well, here's how. You literally perform surgery on the piano. On the left, you see the guts of a normal upright piano. And on the right, whoa, that is something else entirely. It's been cut up and totally re-engineered to be played in a way no one ever had before. Everybody, meet the slide piano. This crazy thing is the brainchild of a researcher named Alex Young. It's part academic project, part mad scientist experiment that asks a simple question. What happens when you mix the DNA of a piano with the soul of an electric slide guitar? And the process to build this is just wild. Young took a piano and stripped it down to its skeleton, that big cast iron frame. Then he physically cut the frame to get to the strings, retuned them just like a slide guitar, and then, to top it all off, he installed electric guitar pickups to amplify it. He essentially turned a piano into a giant resonant lap steel guitar. So let's just step back for a second.
What we have here are two incredible stories of musical innovation, separated by decades and continents, but connected by one singular sound. It's this one unbroken thread of human creativity.
And when you put them side by side, it's fascinating, right? The birth of Chicago blues was driven by this massive social change. It was an organic evolution. The slide piano, on the other hand, was driven by focused academic curiosity, a deliberate reinvention. Totally different reasons, but both ended up creating something completely new.
And that, right there, is the connection. That's the whole point. It doesn't matter if you're a musician in a packed Chicago club just trying to be heard, or a researcher in a quiet Australian lab trying to hear something new. It all comes from the exact same place, that fundamental, relentless human drive to invent new ways to express ourselves. So, from a train chugging north from Mississippi all the way to a university lab in Wollongong, this one little sound has had one heck of a journey. It proves that the story of music is never finished. It's always being reinvented. Which kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What sounds are being born right now in a garage or a club or a lab that will define the music of the future?